The first time I wanted a boy.
We'd like to have a little girl now because we already have a boy.
For the first time, we wanted a boy, and we got our little boy.
Just wait for the next one. You got the baby turned around fine.
I wish we'd had a boy first.
Catch your breath and do it again. Okay. That's good. Good. Come on, baby.
We may get one of each. We're expecting twins.
Okay. Got one shoulder.
I would like to have a boy for my husband.
Let's see what caused all this trouble here.
Oh, God.
How about a big boy?
Oh, you got your boy.
That's a boy. Can find toes, too. Let's give him to you. Okay? Okay. You got it. Okay.
In our society, males enter the world as the preferred sex. American parents want boys.
Yeah.
Mothers have a 2-to-1 preference. For fathers, it's even higher.
Thank you.
All right.
Couples with only girls are more likely to go on having children than couples who already have boys. From the moment the newborn boy is swaddled in a blue blanket and his sister in a pink one, the two children are regarded differently. And thus begins the largely unconscious process of preparing boys to be men and girls to be women. Our preference for one sex over the other and the distinctions that we make from the very beginning set in motion a pattern of treatment which continues right through childhood and probably life.
She'll take the baby. You hold him.
Our stereotypes and assumptions about what is appropriate for a boy or a girl are so deeply ingrained that we make distinctions on the basis of gender without even being aware of it.
Wow. We've got a big boy here.
What are the implications of this? And what do they have to do with shaping the way we behave as adult men and women? Behavior that we may have come to think of as entirely natural.
Once the baby is a boy or a girl, which is one of the perhaps the second piece of information they have after that it's healthy, as of importance to them, is parents see their children in a stereotypic manner.
Psychologists Zella Luria and Jeffrey Rubin came across these stereotypes in a series of interviews with parents who had just had their first child. Even within the first 24 hours, these mothers and fathers already held expectations based on nothing more than the child's gender. The infants themselves were, in the eye of the objective beholder at least, virtually identical, all healthy and about the same weight and the same length. Each parent was seen separately and asked to describe their newborn as they might to a close friend.
Family in particular ways.
Yeah, I can tell that he's...
At the time, the mother had nursed her baby perhaps once, and the father had only seen his child through the nursery window. They were then given a list of opposite words, strong or weak, big or little, hearty or delicate, and asked to choose the ones that best described their own infant. What emerged was one set of labels for girls and a quite different set for boys.
You could almost tell, knowing what the stereotype of being a girl was like, what they said, and knowing what the stereotype of being a boy is, what they said. Both of them believed the baby was better coordinated if it was a boy than a girl, that it was more alert if it was a boy than a girl, that it was stronger if it was a boy than a girl, that it was bigger. Together they agreed that little girls were softer, that little girls were finer featured, littler, and more inattentive. That means their sons were harder, larger featured, bigger, and less inattentive. And when you compared the mothers to the fathers were more likely to be more extreme in their stereotyping. That is, they agreed on a lot of things, but when they stereotyped, they were more extreme. One of the most interesting things to me in this study is the fact that stereotypes can run smack in the face of reality. There is greater vulnerability in the male sex than there is in the female sex. There are more conceptions that are male. There are more accidents for young boys than for girls. There are more diseases that kill off boys than girls. Nonetheless, the stereotypy related to the male role is that boys are less vulnerable and girls are more vulnerable. This flies in the face of biological reality. Nonetheless, the stereotype holds.
Boys are not hardier than girls, but parents' preconceptions encourage them to handle their boys more vigorously. However, it isn't only the gender of the child that influences its treatment. It seems that the sex of the parent also makes a difference.
We found that fathers, just as mothers, were actively interested and involved when they had an opportunity to be with their newborn babies, even in the first 2 or 3 days of life. But we do notice differences in the way that mothers and fathers do treat their boys and their girls. Even in the early observations, while the baby is still in the hospital, we find that the fathers tend to touch and to vocalize more to their boys, particularly if they're firstborn boys, whereas mothers tend to vocalize more to their girls than they do to their boys. So there seems to be a compensation on the part of mothers and fathers, and their behavior depends on the sex of the baby. There's a little toy the babies like to play with.
The ways in which mothers and fathers differ in handling their babies are subtle. Dr. Park watches the smallest details of their behavior, codes these gestures and expressions, and feeds them into a computer. He observes families both in the hospital and at home, and continues to find differences in parents' behavior. Mothers, if they show any preference, are more involved with their girls. Fathers continue to look at, talk to, and play with their sons more than their daughters. As the babies mature, these differences in handling persist and also show up in the way that parents play with their children.
In terms of our own studies in the laboratory when the infants are older, we find at 8 months that fathers tend to play more bouncing games, more rocking games, games that have a more physical component, whereas mothers are more likely to engage in games such as watching games, games that are toy-mediated or involve some object manipulation. And others find that this pattern continues even into the second year of life, that fathers tend to play much more unpredictable, idiosyncratic, and generally more physical games. Mothers, on the other hand, tend to be more oriented towards teaching, and they tend to be much more verbal than fathers. We're not advocating fathers against mothers. We're not running a competition, but rather what we're trying to do is put the father back into the family and recognize the complementary roles that both mothers and fathers play for their boys and girls.
At Stanford University, psychologists Carol Jacklin and Eleanor Maccabee are also looking at how parents influence the way children learn to play and what this does to personality development.
And we'll be giving you sheets.
When the children in their long-term study were 3 years and 9 months, they sent a researcher to visit their homes and set up an experimental play session with a collection of masculine and feminine toys.
Good luck. All right, thanks.
What followed revealed the kind of pressures that mothers and fathers exert on their children's games.
Hi, Janet. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I'm
Susan Tolmack.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
And it's Stuart.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, too.
What we were doing in that study was to try to measure the degree of sex typing in different children. Some boys really will hardly play with anything except space helmets and guns and whatnot. They wouldn't be caught dead handling a girl's toy. Other boys don't seem to care so much. And we wanted to find out which kind of boy we had. And the same issue with girls. Some girls are tomboys and others insist on wearing a frilly dress when they really shouldn't. And their mothers don't want them to. We wanted to find out how highly sex-typed the children were and then relate that to other things we know about the children's histories.
We were specifically trying to find out if the parents are putting pressure on the children to play with some kinds of sex-type toys, or if the children are the ones who are, in some sense, putting the pressure on the parents, if the children are initiating the play with the sex-type toys.
Which would be your favorite? Okay, well, you can just hang on to that. Which would be your second favorite?
You like that
Would
one?
you like to try that on?
Good. Aha.
The end. Promise.
I think that's going to fit on my head. I think it does. All right. This is the Enterprise calling Stewart.
Hello.
Come in, Stewart. Where are you?
Right here.
What are you doing?
Flying.
Are you out in your spaceship?
Yes.
Okay, let's see. That says Star Patrol. Okay, Star Patrol, Mr. Stewart. Let me talk to Space Monk, please.
Hey. Have you ever seen this many toys in one place? Okay. Now, I'll show you what's in here.
This is a bopper. Got it. Good shot.
Well, it does seem that fathers and boys are engaging in more body contact with each other and also through toys, with toys. We have particularly put in these boffer toys so that we could try to elicit that or give them some occasion with which they could naturally do their rough and tumble kind of play. And that has been very successful. Mothers sometimes do engage in this play with their children, but much less frequently than fathers. It does seem to be a father-child activity, particularly father-boy.
Okay. Try and get it together. Okay.
Oh, well, sometimes when we're mad, we can use it to stop with. Oh, my. Oh, okay. Wow. Now, can you get this hand out of there?
Which of the other toys shall we play with? Okay. How do you make tea?
Mothers seem not to make very much distinction in the way they play with a son or a daughter. They don't seem to be particularly upset if a boy wants to play with the curlers that we provide or some other quite feminine type of toy.
That's a pretty rooster on there.
The mothers tend to play with things that have a sort of female interest with both sexes of children. Fathers seem to make much more distinction. They do a lot of sort of wrestling around with their sons. Very seldom do that with daughters and seem quite happy to pull out a baby buggy or what have you and play in that way or with a tea set with their daughters. It's beginning to look to us in our work as though fathers are much more responsible for sex differentiation in children than mothers are. And we're not the first ones to have found this, so it's beginning to look like a solid fact.
On the Binghamton campus of the State University of New York, Jane Marantz Connor and Lisa Serban have collaborated on several studies which suggest that parents are not the only ones shaping sex differences. Preschool teachers are also playing a significant role.
Already, by the age of 3, children identify what are toys appropriate for males and appropriate for females. Given a choice, boys and girls will choose different types of toys to play with. We notice that the boys will, in general, prefer to work with transportation toys, with blocks, with balls, with the climbing types of equipment. Girls, given free choice, spend more of their time in the kitchen corner, playing with the dolls, playing house at home, sweeping, doing these types of domestic activities. When a parent says, I don't know why Mary doesn't play with trucks, as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy to see her play with trucks, but she just doesn't want to. We can look in this child's environment and find a tremendous number of influences. There's schools, there's television, there's books, there's commercials, other children. All of these influences, which have been documented, encourage girls to play with certain types of toys and boys with other types of toys.
Teachers play a large role, I think, in influencing children's interest in specific activities in the classroom. It's true that the children do come in with experience with different kinds of playthings and interests that are developed before they ever arrive at nursery school. But the way that teachers interact with the kids, the way they introduce new materials, and what they do themselves, what they model for the children, has a powerful influence as well. A female teacher may focus her attention on traditionally feminine activities in the room. Girls see this as a model for feminine activities. Similarly, if a male teacher plays with trucks but doesn't go into the kitchen area, boys may see this as a message. And the only way that teachers can really change this pattern is to mix it up a little bit. Female teachers can get into the trucks and the male teachers into the kitchen.
Put it in here. Fill up this, okay? That's the stuff that smells really nice. That's the cloves that we passed around.
Alright. I remember that bottle. I'm gonna do it again.
Okay. We're also gonna need a teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay, that looks pretty good, Joshua. Do you think you can get a teaspoon of cinnamon for us? Do you think you can do that? Let me see. This is going to be kind of tricky. Ruth, here's a teaspoon of cinnamon. Can you put it in the mix for me? Okay, thanks a lot, Ruth. So, since we got all the way around the table, I'm going to start with David again. Can you mix up all these dry ingredients? Very carefully, very slowly and carefully, okay? Now, while you're doing that, we need a cup of honey. Bernadette, do you think you can...
Me. I want to do it.
We'll get back around to you. Let's just let Bernadette stir that in a little bit, okay? So stir it in until it's all one big gooey thing. Right, number 8, top line. Okay, fill up a cup of raisins.
That's the line one.
This is really hard.
I can do it. I'm sure I can.
Okay. Okay, now, hold on. Squeeze this part together with your left hand. Squeeze it really tight.
I want to do it too.
From behind a one-way mirror, these students are analyzing a demonstration of the ways teachers typically handle problem behavior in the preschool classroom. Serban and Connor's research finds that when a girl acts aggressively, she is either completely ignored or else quietly cautioned. But when a boy is acting up, he is 3 times more likely to be reprimanded, and the scolding will be loud and very obvious.
Boys do hit more. Boys do get involved in more of these aggressive episodes, and we see that straight through. I don't think aggression is learned in the classroom. I think the children come in with this behavior pattern available to them. I do think what happens, though, is that the way the teacher responds can either maintain this aggressive behavior at high levels or can diminish it. Okay, there you go. That's a very good example of the kind of disruptive behavior that we'll typically see for the boys at this age. Okay, notice the activity level, notice the noise level, really head-on collision there. Okay, and catch the teacher's reaction.
David, remember, no crashing. If you guys don't slow down, we're going to have to take them away from you.
I will slow down.
Okay. For the boy, if he hits and he gets this loud, now what's going on over there, boys? Cut it out. Action stops in the room. Everybody stares. He becomes the center of attention. He may not get what he wanted in the first place. He may have been hitting over a toy. He won't necessarily get that. But what happens is that he knows that's an effective way of getting attention. That it's not that the teachers are deliberately trying to encourage boys to be aggressive. I don't think they're doing that. In fact, they really complain about this behavior. But they seem very unaware that their kind of oversensitivity to it and their tendency to jump in fact, makes it a very effective behavior for the boys. And since they don't respond to the girls, not so effective. So the boys continue to do it and the girls drop it out.
While boys are learning that aggression gets attention, girls are discovering that for them, dependency on the teacher will bring reward.
For little girls, being dependent, staying near the teacher, being a good kid. This is almost the definition of what a good, compliant child is in elementary school. Quiet, listens to the teacher, does what they're supposed to do, is adult-oriented, and so forth. Again, these are behaviors which may be learned and probably are taught by parents before they arrive at school. But what teachers do is to maintain these dependent behaviors in girls, whereas with boys, they're actively encouraging more independent interests and styles of relating to other children. What we find is that if a girl is seated immediately next to the teacher or working right near the teacher, she'll get more comments from the teacher, have more interaction with the teacher than if she's working or playing even slightly further away. Now, what this means is that for a little girl, if she wants to be the center of attention, she kind of has to hang around. And that's a very powerful encouragement for her to do so.
Here, Brandy, here you go. Hey, you know that we can write on...
We find a very interesting difference for boys, though. For boys, it really doesn't make too much difference where they're working, as long as they're somewhere within eye and voice contact with the teacher. They can be either right beside the teacher or slightly further away, another part of the room. They still get about the same amount of attention from the teacher. The teacher is still likely to notice where they are and what they're doing. There's no particular incentive for a boy to hang around where the teacher is. For girls, there is. I think there is kind of a hidden curriculum involving differential treatment of boys and girls that goes right through school. It's quite consistent with what we see at the preschool level, and we see it in the elementary and the high school. I think teachers have different expectations for boys and girls, and because of that, they tend to interact with them quite differently.
In the psychology department of the University of California at Berkeley, Professor Jean Block and her husband Jack have devoted the past 11 years to studying the personality development of 130 boys and girls from a wide range of family backgrounds.
What's this for?
What does that look like to you?
It's a machine gun.
The children have been videotaped, interviewed, and tested at regular intervals since they were 3. The project was not designed to look for sex differences, but from the beginning it was obvious that even in the innocent sandbox play of 4-year-olds, there were substantial differences between the behavior of the boys and that of the girls. As the children have grown, Dr. Block has watched these personality differences take on more significance and greater complexity. She has strong evidence that the reason for this can be found, at least in part, by looking at what's going on at home.
I think it's important to recognize that parents aren't always aware that they are raising their sons and their daughters differently. If we were to ask them, they would say, oh no, I really behave very much the same way with my little girl and with my little boy. But actually, some of the ways in which their behaviors differ are really quite subtle, and parents are not aware of it.
Nova wanted to investigate a family like those in Dr. Block's study, with at least one boy and one girl. With the help of her staff, we found one. The Grahams of Gaithersburg, Maryland. Pat Graham is studying for her master's degree and working part-time. Don Graham is an elementary school principal. Cindy, 12, on the left, has just started junior high, and Michael, 6, David, 8, and Amy, 10, are all in elementary school. We asked them to let us into their home to witness some of the daily events in routine family life, which are more significant than they might seem. Since the Grahams live a long way from Berkeley, California, Dr. Block sent research assistant Andrea Morrison to help Nova look at their household from the perspective of the original study.
Nice to meet you. Pat Graham. Guy Graham.
Nice to meet you.
Amy.
Hi.
Amy.
Cindy.
Cindy.
Mike.
That's Michael.
And Dave.
Hi. Come on in. Okay.
I guess I've always had it in my mind that I would like to have 4 children, and 2 would be girls and 2 would be boys.
Yeah.
You know, my whole thing was that the mother would work with the girls and do the things that she has done, and I would have the sons, and so when we had our first child and it was a girl, I was a little disappointed because I wanted a son.
The very first thing that when David was born, what did you do? The very first thing. As soon as you left the hospital, where did you go?
I went out and bought 2 lacrosse sticks.
Right, you went right to the sports store and got 2 baby lacrosse sticks. Okay, see,
Mothers and fathers cherish different hopes and dreams for sons and for daughters. Pat and Don Graham are no exception. And like other parents, their hopes and dreams affect the relationships they have with their children.
As we look at some of the socialization differences, ways in which parents rear their children, we find differences in what mothers and fathers do. We find differences in what they do with their sons and what they do with their daughters.
Change? Dad change.
You never want to be dressed up. You never want to look handsome. Just to wear.
Maybe I forgot to get that for you.
Okay.
Pass that. Mommy has wheat bread there if you want it.
If you put that on your plate, you've got to eat it.
Sons are expected to be more independent, to control their feelings, and assume more responsibility.
Michael's a good bread eater, too.
Mikey likes the wheat
He
bread.
likes to eat it.
Fathers, especially, are more authoritarian with boys, stricter.
You know what you can remember? And I probably mentioned this before, but I want to say it again. If somebody pays you a compliment, say thank you, because they're giving you something. Pull the chair around and put your feet under it, please. Can you remember that?
Parents also expect boys to be strong-willed, hardworking, intelligent, and ambitious.
Right time? Good. Up, Michael.
As far as girls are concerned, parents describe their relationship as physically closer, warmer, and more intimate than with their sons. They believe more in the trustworthiness and truthfulness of their daughters.
I think it sounds pretty.
Bad enough.
Girls get more pressure to be obedient, kind and unselfish, to be attractive and loving, well-mannered, ultimately to marry and to be good mothers.
I have some really strong feelings about raising my daughters, and eventually, you know, I'm looking forward to one day them being mothers. I certainly hope it's not in high school. I certainly hope it's not shortly after they get married. I'd like them to have lots of experiences, but one of these days, I'd like to see them be mothers. I think it's probably the most important profession in the whole world, and I really mean that. Okay, ladies, you have your books.
Yes.
Mrs. Abbott will let you know, won't she?
Yeah.
Did you practice before you came? A little? Every day?
Yes. I do it every day.
Get the check out of my pocketbook, and then you can give it to her when you go in. We like to do things together, and I think they see that I enjoy doing things with them. I'll be back about quarter of?
Yeah, quarter of 8.
Okay. I think intentionally I'm getting them to cook. I'm giving them responsibilities around the house for cleaning and things like that. I let them see how I rely on Don. I think they see that I enjoy my house, being here at home and doing things in my home. And I don't necessarily say these things to them. I think they just pick it up and see that this is part of a good family life.
Hey, this is the same one. No!
They love to be with little children. They like to play with little children. And they just have kind of a natural love for these little children. And I encourage that.
Okay, who's next?
Me.
The girls I don't have to worry about.
I'll tell you when to stop.
Okay, well, we don't know how much is left, so okay, who needs a little more? Everybody satisfied?
Oh, they're cookies.
The parents of girls emphasize the proprieties of behaviors. They want their little girls to be ladylike and therefore not to be aggressive or to be assertive. And then a final difference in terms of what parents say is important to them in rearing their daughters is that they are more restrictive. They supervise the activities of their daughters more than they do the sons.
I don't like to see noisy girls, active girls, rambunctious. I'd like them to be, ladylike, for want of a better word. Quiet, polite. I don't want them to be, shy and withdrawn. And I want them to, if they want to be on a team at school, or if they want to play kickball out in the backyard, I'm not going to say, don't do that, you'll get dirty or something like that. I want them to have fun. But I would hope that my daughters weren't tomboys.
Ready, stop, 3, 4. Together, let's go.
I think it's important for boys to play on a team sport, to be aggressive.
3, 4, ready, stop, 3, 4. Stretch. Stretch them out. Make it hurt. Does it hurt? Stretch. Stretch it out. Make it hurt. Make it hurt.
You're better athletes. You're better business people, if you will. I think are the more aggressive type that are going to go out and get the contract or get the ball. They have to be a little aggressive, and in this world you've got to be, or if you can't let people walk all over you. And I think that, again, athletics tends to help you do that.
Listen, don't say anything. Let me talk to you, okay? This team is hustling. They're going after the ball, but you got to hustle.
It's good to make them push themselves to the limit of their capabilities, and maybe sometimes beyond their capabilities. And in competitive type games, they do that. Plus the fact that it gives them a sense of worth, if you will, a sense of accomplishment. That's what it is.
You're going to have to get the ball today. This team's going to be good. Get the ball. Get the ball and get it down here. Play a good game, okay? Play a good game. All right? Give me a hand. Give me a hand. Give me a hand. Okay, who's going to win today? I can't hear you.
Parents of boys emphasize that achievement is important. They want their boys to do well. They encourage them to play competitive games. They value independence and want their boys to be self-reliant. These are not patterns that are stressed in girls.
Keep on it! Keep on it! Go, Mike! Keep going, Mikey! Yeah! All right! Woo! All right! Mike, nice playing. Good shot. Good shot.
I think there is a difference between the relationship I have with my sons and my daughters. I think that I have it's a more active relationship with my sons. I'm involved in more physical kinds of activities with them, sports types activities, and I see my girls as girls, as not physical type people.
I'm raising my boys to be gentlemen. I want them to be strong physically. I want them to be strong, have strong characters. For instance, when I was thinking that I was going to get married, I knew what kind of man I wanted to marry. And I wanted him to be stronger than I was. Morally, I wanted a man to be stronger religiously than I was. And I picked Don, and I did a fine job. And I expect the boys to be a lot like their father.
We might play some of the other guys. We might play you at someplace else, too. I don't know.
I want them to have good sportsmanship. I don't like it if I see them booing in a game. And I want them to get along. I want them to be leaders.
Are you satisfied, Tookie?
My own thing is I want my family to be dependent on me. I like my wife to be dependent. There's some things that she needs me for, I think, and my children need me for. And I personally value that.
I
And-
see that as a strength. He's a symbol of strength in our family, for instance. And then you would expect your boys to have the same.
I think I would like them to feel the same way, that they were needed, that they felt wanted, and
Responsible.
yeah, responsibility.
The values that the Grahams hold dear in raising their sons and daughters are already familiar to Dr. Block. She has found them repeatedly in the families of her study. It seems that in learning the attitudes considered appropriate for their adult roles, boys and girls also learn to think quite differently about themselves. The result? They have distinctly different ways of approaching and dealing with the world.
Children, it seems to me, develop then in different kinds of contexts. And the context for a little girl is more structured, it's more supervised, and it's more circumscribed, so that she's protected from experience.
Before we go, we have to get some.
The parents of girls encourage the girls to stay closer to them.
Quiz kid bag. Amy. I did it.
Everything tends to focus the little girl on the house.
Stick it in the linen closet.
The chores they're given are also chores that encourage them to be in the house.
Pardon me. I have to get a new trash bag.
Perhaps taking care of younger siblings. She is encouraged to engage in these kinds of nurturing behaviors. I think it's important to recognize that the embeddedness of the girls in the family network from a very early age insulates them to some extent from experience.
With some left over.
This insulation by the family means that girls have little practice in developing ways to deal with the new and unexpected. Boys, on the other hand, are less sheltered, and they get more experience than girls do in dealing with the unfamiliar.
Because the world of a little boy is a more extended world, and the little boy has less supervision. Boys, as they are presently socialized in this culture, are provided more opportunities for discovering, for inventing, and for actively understanding the world in which they live. They're given more freedom in exploring the world. They're allowed to explore the neighborhood more. They're allowed to play more by themselves. Their activities are not as supervised. They go out into the neighborhood, and they encounter things sometimes that they don't expect to encounter. They have to improvise. They have to engage in some kind of problem solving right there on the spot. In a spontaneous way, they have to develop some way for coping with a situation that they didn't anticipate.
You gotta go all the way up to the last part you did. Okay, now turn.
When they're given chores, the chores typically may take them outside the house.
Find missile too. Come on up to the top deck. Except for me. I'll fix some dinner.
Boys' play involves more complex games. And while there is a set of rules that governs the game, the ability to seize the moment and take advantage of an unexpected event is important.
Go! Oh, Mike. Who's there? Who's there? Take him down, Mike! Kick it hard, Alan!
Boys typically play in larger groups. Cooperation is stressed within the team members, and competition is important between members of the team.
Watch the goalie!
Boys' games require a great deal more negotiation about who wins a certain point and so on, and so that boys are given practice in the art of negotiation.
You kicked it into the middle. Kick it down the side, okay?
Girls' games, on the other hand, are played in smaller groups, and the games are rule-bound in a way such that deviations are really not permitted.
Spinning, cupping, and there's baby drops. Ready?
There is a special way in which the game is played, and each girl is expected to play according to those rules. And it's been found that when there is a dispute among girls in their games, that they are unable really to negotiate the difference of opinions, and they stop playing the game and start another game.
That's lying. You have to do it over. That's right. Do it over.
The games that children play can play an important function in preparing them for their adult roles, and there are differences in the games and the characteristics of the games that boys and girls play. Because females develop in a more restrictive, supervised, structured environment, they have less opportunity to engage in active experimentation, to engage in the kind of trial and error learning that benefits problem solving.
Okay, here's a game I'd like the three of you to work on together.
Dr. Block devised an experiment to find out whether parents, in helping their children solve problems, treat sons and daughters differently.
Correctly. Now, here are the rules.
Andrea asked Don and Pat to work with Michael and then with Amy, placing blocks of different shapes and colors in their appropriate positions on a complex diagram. In each case, the task was difficult enough for the child to need help.
Square shapes can go inside the square
The fathers emphasized the cognitive aspects of the task. They tried to explain principles to the son. They tried to help the son understand what was happening.
At the same time, only blue can go inside blue.
Fathers placed more emphasis on achievement and performance for their sons than for their daughters. It was important to them that their sons do well in the situation.
Where do you think that would go, Mike? Here's the triangle.
Now, where's the circle?
Where's the circle? Okay.
All right, now.
Put it inside the circle, inside the orange.
Now, it's got to go inside
Good.
the orange. Terrific.
Good. What do we
For
need, Mike?
sons, fathers appear to emphasize the importance of intellectual achievement for later success.
Good, Mike. How about that one?
The father and daughter simply had fun together. It was important to enjoy being together, and the task that they were to do simply paled in its importance. The message being conveyed to the daughter by her father appears to be that the affective relationship is really important, and that this is where her future success will be found. Now, we also found differences in the behaviors of mothers as well.
I don't think it matters. Does it? Go with the big.
It looks like I would guess big.
Is that two or more?
And these,
In working with their daughters in the teaching situation, what we found was that the mothers provided help. They interfered almost in the task where it wasn't necessary.
It's inside the blue and it's inside the orange.
They gave gratuitous help, even when the daughters were doing well.
Fill it up? No, you just put it inside.
Okay.
See, that's an orange color, right? Inside of a square.
So it's a
Square inside
small-
of a square. Now, do we count that?
But-
oh, wait,
but in
that's
relationship,
wrong.
good, Amy.
Amy's. What can I say?
Good, eh?
When a mother provides help that is not necessary, then the message is being given, you couldn't do this by yourself. And in a way, it's devaluing the capabilities of the little girl. When we moved to the schools, the same pattern is found over again. A pattern where the teachers respond more to boys than they do to girls.
I want to read it to get the idea. All right, what's the second thing that you're going to do? What are they asking for, right? If we're talking math, maybe they're going to ask...
Teachers tend to encourage boys more, and they attribute the successes of boys to their own capacities, to their brightness, to the fact that they really were very smart.
I'll give you one other stipulation. What's that? Did it say more nickels?
They often attribute the successes of girls to the fact that they were lucky or that they tried hard. And again, this kind of message from teachers tends to call into question in the mind of a young girl her own confidence. And I think the boy is getting a message that he can create effects in the world. And I think that this fosters in boys a sense of efficacy, a sense of mastery, a sense that I'm a person with some power to make things happen. And this perhaps may be the most important kind of message that a little boy can have. He enters activities with a premise that he can make a difference, that he can create effects.
The children in Dr. Bloch's 11-year study were growing up during a time of social upheaval when it seemed that the traditional roles of men and women were converging. Nonetheless, these boys and girls have developed a very different sense of themselves and their power. And this is not the only difference to have emerged. There are other, very marked personality and behavior contrasts, which suggest that even this generation is being raised with the expectation that boys will be breadwinners and girls will be mothers.
Based on a careful evaluation of the results of research by others and the results of the study that we are currently involved in, I've come to the conclusion that there are sex differences in 7 major areas. The first is aggression. Males and females differ in the amount of aggression. They differ from an early age, even as young as 4. And this seems to be one of the best documented sex differences. The differences are expressed in more rough and tumble play, in more physical fighting, in the preference, for example, of more adventurous and aggressive television films, in terms of greater competition, and at an older age, males becoming involved in more antisocial behavior of an aggressive, violent kind. There are sex-related differences in activity. Boys play outside more. They play more actively. They change the nature of their activities more. They find it more difficult to sit still. Related to activity is a sex difference in curiosity and exploratory behaviors. Boys are more curious. They want to know how things work, and they appear to engage in more exploratory behaviors than girls. There are sex differences in impulsivity, where males are found to be more impulsive than females. When we define impulsivity to mean difficulty in resisting temptation, distractibility, becoming involved in situations that can be dangerous, males are found to be more impulsive than females. Another indication is the difference in accident rate. Males have greater percentage of accidents at each age level, from early childhood into adulthood, a reflection of a sex difference in impulsivity, where males will take more chances than females. There are sex differences in anxiety, with females being more fearful and anxious than males. When asked what kinds of things they're afraid of, the list for females is much longer.
What do you want to think about here? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5.
The anxiety is also shown in the fact that females are more compliant. They're more obedient. They're more concerned with social desirability, wanting to do the right thing. All of these are facets or manifestations of anxiety.
4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. Good.
There are sex differences in the importance of social relationships. Females appear to be more nurturing, and from a very early age. They express an interest, a greater interest than boys do, in playing with dolls, in an interest in babies, and enact in their play nurturing behaviors.
And Cheryl's my name. Football's my game.
In general, females show a pattern of being concerned with the welfare of the group in terms of their social relationships, so that they cooperate, they compromise more than do males.
Yes, okay.
Females are more empathic. They can understand more the feelings of other people, take the role of the other person more readily than males. Males have a more extensive network of friends. However, these friends tend not to be as intimate as the friends of females. For females, interpersonal relationships appear to be more salient, more important than they are for males. And so that females have fewer friends, but more intimate, intense friendships with those friends. They share their anxieties, they share their hopes, they share their despairs more with their friends than is true of males.
Oh my gosh, there's 12 of them too.
There are sex differences in the quality of the self-concept held by males and females. Males appear to view themselves as more powerful and as having more control over events that happen in the world, that they can make a difference. Females do not appear to share that feeling. Males seem to view themselves as more instrumental, as more effective, as more ambitious, and as more assertive and able to make things happen. This is not a perception that females, for the most part, hold.
Christ. Body of Christ. Body of Christ.
There are sex differences in achievement-related behaviors. Males expect to do better than females and set higher levels of aspiration for themselves in achievement-related situations. Females are less confident and actually underestimate their performances even when they do well. If they have failed or have not done well, females tend to blame their failures on themselves. I wasn't smart enough. In that situation, however, males blame their failures on external circumstance. The test was too difficult or the questions were tricky. And so that we see clear sex differences in achievement-related behaviors for males and females starting in the elementary school.
Well, I think the difference between some boys and girls is they enjoy completely, not completely, but they enjoy different things in different ways.
Like most boys would like to cook.
I like to cook.
There are exceptions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, all the great chefs are boys, usually.
Not really.
Not really.
Well, Julia Child. Julia Child
Everybody
is
breaks
not a boy.
Who's she?
A cook. A long time ago, that everybody thought that the woman's place was in the home.
I never heard of a boy who played with baby dolls.
Well, what about the story
yeah.
William Wants a Doll?
Oh, that.
Mm-hmm.
What? Oh, you mean that completely depends. Like a Batman doll. That's a doll.
That's completely
It's a baby doll.
I think that the women were pretty smart because they're the one who got the men to let them vote. Some women are better than men in sports.
But some old women still do it the way that they, in like the olden days, they like to stay home and knit and cook and bake bread and stuff like that.
Because people think that men are stronger.
They
count on men. Women count on men. Some women have been counting on men for a long time. Because men are supposed to be stronger than women.
Supposedly.
What did you get out of
When I grow up, I'm going to be a teacher. Because I like little kids, like first and second graders.
I want to be a teacher too because my parents were teachers, and I like little kids too.
I might want to be a teacher and I might want to be a nurse. Because I like to help little kids do things. And I also like taking care of people.
I like teaching, but my ambition, and I think I'm good at it, I'd like to be an actor or a professional Broadway star or something like this.
I have 3 things I want to be. First of all, I want to be a pro soccer player and astronaut and principal.
I'd like to be a doctor.
Well, I would like to be a nurse because, I get to learn about what they do and...
Even though it's been 60 years, some men and women are still chauvinistic